Amazing.
Is the name of your boat Eat More Chicken?
Actually, it's Chicken Fruit.
Is it really?
No, it's not. But that was the name I was trying to give it.
Was it?
My kids named our first boat 30-something years ago Dad's Day Off, because we could take it out when Dad had a day off.
Nice.
Aw.
So now
That's very wholesome.
Very
yeah.
wholesome.
Unlike my Billy Crystal joke I just did. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's Dad's Day Off 3.
That's awesome.
We've grown from a little 19-foot, 1977 boat to the new boat. So it's pretty sweet. You've seen it.
I've seen it. Yes, I watched it.
Is it faster than Matt's pontoon?
A little.
Do you think-
With the right wind.
You know,
It's got like 3 Yamahas on the back of it or something crazy.
Yeah. So I was out on the water for Memorial Day, and normally I get frustrated when people pass me. Not because I'm like hyper competitive, I don't think. It's just. Am I? Fact check? Yeah, Jessica's in the back. Fact check. All right, so I am a little competitive, but I just feel like it should go faster. Like it's only 115 horse. I get it, but I mean, if I have everyone on my boat, like 8 people, I will not go faster than 17 miles an hour, full throttle.
That's the point. Where are you going with that many people in a big hurry on the party boat?
Well,
The party barge.
I don't want to be in a big hurry, but I don't want to go 17 miles an hour. I mean, 30 I think is respectable.
Yeah, I think Scott called your pontoon a floating couch. That's what he said. All right, I'm glad that's getting better for you, man.
That's correct.
Every therapy session.
Yeah, it was therapy and a little bit of Zoloft, and it's.
Hey, I don't care what boat you own up here in Melbourne. When you cruise through Miami, you have a complete Fort Lauderdale to Miami. You have a complete check on what's a boat.
Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah, because we were watching
Fair.
them put my boat, which is a pretty decent sized boat around here, on the top of this other dude's boat. It was like his tender.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it fit right there behind his helicopter. But it was, it's an adjustment.
Yeah, that's a whole different. It's a whole different conversation. I would not own a pontoon in Miami. There's just no way.
It'd just be unacceptable.
I don't. I mean, my ego is already kind of out of control, and so I think I would have a complete breakdown.
See, that's we're not being recorded right now, right?
No, this is all being recorded.
It's all being recorded. That's great. I was going to say that's one pissing match you would just lose. And
Oh yeah, no, you can say
you can't
piss on
have
this
enough
podcast.
money to beat the next guy out.
No.
You spend a lot of time out on the water, Scott. That's like the what Scott does for fun?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's what we do as a family. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's
Nice,
awesome.
man.
So if it's engages the water, we're in it.
Do you ever take the new boat like on longer trips? Like, do you go down to the Bahamas? Do you go down to? You just take it from here and go down to the Keys?
Yeah, we're leaving next Thursday to cruise to Jupiter, then to Coconut Grove, and then down to Marathon.
Very cool.
It'll be tricky with the weather, but hopefully God will give us clear windows, and then we'll cruise back. So we've done that trip several times. It's 240 miles to Marathon and back.
Nice.
Dude, so you have 2 or 3 motors on your boat?
Two.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 300s.
Okay. 2
Which-
300s.
Man, that's crazy. I was like you. I had 150 horsepower. Was it Evinrude, 1977 Evinrude. So true story. We get this boat, bought it used when my son's probably, 7 or 8. And we would just charge. We would just go out. And we'd head out of here, Sebastian, run 30, 40 miles offshore in this beater boat with this ancient engine. And we go fish all day and then come back. And we never thought twice about it. And we sold that boat, which was a good boat, but we upgraded a little bit. Family's a little bigger. And that boat spent most of the time broke down. New engine, but it was always broke down. And so we're always getting towed in. And we're like, Dad, can you believe when we didn't have sea tow? We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
We're taking this boat just out in the middle of the ocean and, with no float plan, nothing. And just charging it and never had a problem.
My father-in-law, Marty, he took us out. I ended up buying this boat from him sometime later, but like he had this little 19-foot Sea Boss with a 90-horse Johnson motor on the back. And we went 20 miles out into the ocean.
Yeah.
In the Sea Boss that only had 90 horse and to do some fishing, to go fish mahi. And that was an experience. That was an experience. I didn't know how dumb that was until
Right. That's his point.
Until much. And he did this. He did this stuff all the time. He's kind of a balls to the wall kind of a guy in general. So he's never worried about anything. But yeah, I didn't realize how bad of an idea that was. Scott was with me on that one.
Was he?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I threw up on that trip.
My younger brothers, we used to go to Seneca Lake in Ohio, and they had these. It's like the little wave runner Yamaha jet skis that you stand up in the tray, you know, and all the no fear stickers all over it.
No fear.
And the problem was like for me to get in that thing and it not to sink immediately, because I'm like, you know, for it not just like the whole back to sink immediately.
Hold on, you kind of muffled the
300 pounds. I just got to like full throttle it and then try to like get my knees up on the tray. So I had was all bruised up from the jets, it's too much, you know. So bigger boat went, like I'd take the floating couch over that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the floating couch.
It's nice.
But there are pontoons that pass me. Like, I'm just saying, like there are other pontoon boats that pass me. Some pontoons have like 350s on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
But mine's not built for that, I guess.
But I haven't seen any wave runners out in the ocean yet. I don't know if you guys see those things.
In the ocean?
You see them?
No.
Al Sebastian, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Actually, follow this guy on YouTube. He goes out of Miami and he fishes. He goes out trolling, and apparently they have a class that you can go out and fish off the PWCs, the little boats.
No wonder.
Welcome to the Legacy Angel Network Venture Lounge, where nothing ventured is nothing changed. For Matt Helmentaler, press 1. For member services, press 2. For real raw startup stories, press 3. For all other questions or concerns, please wait on the line in our
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Helmentaler, and you're listening to Venture Lounge, after-hour conversations with founders and investors. These are the stories, insights, and conversations that you aren't going to find on the company website. Because the real lessons you learn in the startup world, the risk you take as an entrepreneur, the highs and the lows, the moments in your journey when no one else believes in you right before you break through, those are the moments that you just have to hear for yourself. So grab a drink and listen in to the men and women who are changing the world. Welcome to the Venture Lounge.
Welcome back to Venture Lounge, everybody. Nothing ventured, nothing changed. I'm Connor Sherman, creative director here at Legacy Angel Network. And I'm joined today, as always, by our founder and host, Matt Helmentaler. Matt, what's up?
Hello. How's it going?
Introduce our friend Scott here.
Absolutely. So everybody, this is Scott Washburn. Scott and I have known each other for several years. Knew more of each other until I started Legacy Angel Network. I think actually we connected before that on the FCA board.
Right.
Yes. So we were on the FCA board together, and then I started Legacy Angel Network, and Scott was actually one of our initial supporters. I would say first 5 guys to join our group. Back in it was the start, I think, of 2018 is when Scott joined, and so but we've been going down a path for a while. He became a partner of our company, but he's got a tremendous reputation in our community. There's a lot of people that know of Scott Washburn. He owns a couple of sweet Chick-fil-A's, near and dear to all of us.
Sweet as that Polynesian sauce, man, I'm telling you.
And but he's got just a reputation for managing his companies well, but also caring about his people. So he's just our kind of people, and we're glad to have him on the show. And welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Maybe give your Wikipedia summary of Scott Washburn here, man, and then we'll talk early days, like how he got into all this.
Man, how far you want me to go back?
Go
back.
Back.
Take us.
My folks moved here in 1963. We lived down in Stock Island, the Keys. But my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved every couple of years. So I've literally lived. We never went anywhere internationally, but I've lived all over the place. From Michigan to Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, California, leaving a couple states out of there, but Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
So a bit of everywhere.
You feel like tropical weather like this is really been this is what you call home?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've spent most of my life here in Florida. And, even when it wasn't there, we had weather extremes. Whether we lived in Louisiana, still have hurricanes. Georgia, they'd still come up that way. But yeah, Michigan was probably the most interesting. I was a little kid, and we get those blizzards come through. And I remember one time we had a blizzard so severe that it snowed up to my second floor window.
Oh, geez.
And I could climb out the window. Yeah, it was about the most extreme.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
awesome.
When did you first start scratching that entrepreneurial itch, man? That's what I like to what's most interesting to me is, was it obvious to you that you kind of had that blood in you, or is it something you figured out over time as far as what you're doing with your life now, It's
one of those things that you don't realize you're in the middle of until you look back. My grandparents started a real estate company back in the 50s.
Wow.
In Atlanta. And so he was a broker, my grandmother was a broker, and they were doing real estate development and real successful in that. My dad actually joined them after he left the Air Force, is why we wound up in Atlanta for a lot of my school years. But then my dad, as he joined the real estate company, he became an attorney late in life. GI Bill rolled out, and they extended that retroactively to the servicemen. And so he became an attorney, started his own business there. But he had several businesses that he had started and different levels of success. My dad lived life to the fullest, we like to say, and so he likes to say he was a millionaire 3 different times. And so I think it was just sort of ingrained with the grandparents and parents, and we'd sit around Sundays and talk business and opportunities. And I think when I realized that was I went to college, went to Liberty University, studied computer science and business. And I remember being in the computer lab and just hammered away at it. And I finished up, I think it was our senior project. Took me several weeks in the computer lab. I think it took the rest of the guys about 15 hours. So I realized this probably isn't my best avenue. But I was already working at Chick-fil-A, and I began to talk to him. Jerry Stevens was our operator, about his business, because he had a lot of autonomy. He had a lot of freedom. Played a lot of golf, but he just really seemed to have a lifestyle. And I began, it was because of what he did, starting business and then having that freedom to grow and develop it. But it was real influential.
How old were you when you started working for Chick-fil-A?
Oh, that goes back embarrassing early, 16.
Wow.
1979.
That's incredible, man. Well, what was the state of the franchise then? Were there inklings that would be anything as successful as it is now, or what? How did?
There were 100 restaurants, mainly in the Southeast.
Wow.
And it was very new, but it was very dynamic. And I think without that being a buzzword at the time, the culture was a big part of what I saw in Chick-fil-A that set it distinctly apart. And, interesting story, my girlfriend at the time and I went and applied for jobs. And the guy was foolish enough to hire us, mainly me. I mean, she speaks for herself, but the guy that hired us was eventually, he worked for Chick-fil-A, but the owner was Dan Cathy, who was the CEO and son of Truett Cathy. And it was just such a new thing that, the family was still in there running the businesses, and you had a lot of interaction with the family.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. So I have to know, have they ever changed the recipe, or has it always tasted like that?
It's always tasted like that.
Wow, yeah.
So True actually came up with the product in 1940. He started his restaurant in 1945, and he wanted a way to quickly cook chicken. He was in front of the Ford plant. They had 20 minutes, 30 minutes for lunch or dinner. So that's when he flayed it, because it would cook quicker, and turned it into a sandwich, and people could take it on the go. And so it was an ingenious invention, and he realized he had a good thing going, so began to franchise from there the product. And just franchising the product alone was problematic. So in 1968, he set up a more traditional franchise arrangement. Well, 1967.
Wow. And
so the first one was there in Georgia. So I joined, not too long after that, in 1979. Sandy, my wife, became operators in 1985. Store opened in 1986, and at that point, our store number was 221, so it was 220 stores at that time.
Wow!
And it was still very much mom and pop. When you look at it today, and I was even told this at our grand opening that it doesn't seem like something that would just take over. Mm-hmm. A little food stand in the mall. I mean, big dreams, but there were people who would tell me, which I get to prove them wrong, that you got a great thing here, but I don't think it'll make it. And when I'm like you, Matt, you tell me I can't do something, that competitive piece kicks in, and our goal was to just take over.
Yeah.
But although Chick-fil-A existed and that entrepreneurial stuff was established, there were no Chick-fil-A's in this area. Mm-hmm. I think there were 5 in all of Central Florida.
Wow.
And because of that, we were sort of pioneers. Mm-hmm. We had to promote the product. People didn't know what it was, so we wanted to create trial. And so from a street marketing standpoint, we were out in the community, everything we could go to either get the product in people's mouths or create that trial, get them back to the restaurant. And we did that for the first decade.
Wow.
So those first years were very, very lean. They were tough.
I remember me and my buddy Eric Frankel, shout out to Eric, much love, buddy. So he was my best friend in junior high and high school. And we would go to the Melbourne Square Mall to talk to girls. But we had a tradition. We would go to Chick-fil-A. And I remember seeing you there, actually. And we would go to the Chick-fil-A in the mall. We would order an 8-piece chicken nugget, barbecue sauce, our fries, our waffle fries. And we would eat that, give us the energy to go talk to girls.
The courage.
Important component.
Courage.
Yeah.
So it's
those golden nuggets.
Those golden nuggets, man. It's just like, I can do anything. Anyway, so but I remember that it was just as a part of my, some of my formative years here in Brevard County. There was these fun moments I had with my best friend eating nuggets at the mall from your store.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I don't think I ever told you that before.
No, I haven't heard that.
No, Chick-fil-A really feel like, it is differentiated by, you keep using that culture word, but it really does feel when you're eating there, it's a different thing than just like going to, there's other fast food chains that you just run through for necessity. You know what I mean? And like Chick-fil-A has that convenience element to it, but it is just a solid product, solid environment. There's just something extra about it. Well, just to hone in on you talking about your family experience, Scott, Aubrey and I went to, back a couple of years ago, we went to this conference in Cincinnati, Ohio, that was Family Teams is what it was called. And the entire idea was for families to get in the mindset of like, if it's possible, if it suits you, to build an economic engine together, you know what I mean? To like find that entrepreneurial energy and synergy between yourselves and just get out of this mindset that you need to just get employed at separate places, And so it's cool to see, one, that your family was, I'm assuming just by what you said, like in that mindset, and it rubbed off on you and built your skill set. And then I wanted to ask if that was, if like when you started at Chick-fil-A, was it always the vision of like, I can take this to its furthest conclusion and become an operator? Or, what did that journey look like?
Well, not initially. I was going to be in computers. Back in the 80s, computers were becoming big. Apple was still this very small thing. IBM really ruled the market, but as I could see that was going to be the future. Personal computers, and felt like there'd be an inroad. But it was also the time where there was a major recession and things weren't happening. So not unlike in the 2006 and 2007 when you're getting out of college and, oh, by the way, you don't have a job. It was very similar. So for me to have been working with Chick-fil-A, and there's a whole backstory that was going on to this as well, because when I came back from college, because I was in Virginia, I assumed I could go back to work for the Chick-fil-A I was working at. Well, he had given away all our jobs and, business as usual. And I said, well, okay, I'll look for something else. Well, I get a call back from the manager there who says, hey, look, they need some guys and look for college guys to help them move. The corporate office located in Virginia Avenue in Atlanta to Hapeville. Well, from Hapeville to it's Red Oak, but it's to a new corporate office. And so True bought 120 acres, built this beautiful building on it, and they just needed big guys to move stuff. So when I returned from college, first summer, that's what I did. I helped them get things set up, get the corporate office cleaned up. And we did, I guess, a good enough job. They gave us an open invite to come back any break and do special projects, landscaping, whatever needed to be done. So I also had that other inroad, this kind of a back road where I was in there with the executives and they saw me every day working. And, I think that they saw that I was, had a strong work ethic. And at that point, I was a big guy. Threw hammer and discus and shot put for Liberty University. So,
wow, man.
So I was about, 230 pounds. I was a big dude, and so you couldn't miss me. And so were a lot of the guys that I was working with. They were other athletes, and we had a great time. And but I think that gave me an exposure to the company, and then respectively to the company to see who I was. That when I graduated college, I had this invite. And that is a little unusual for them to say, we really want you to come in and join us after college. And so I had a little different inroad. Matter of fact, one of my interviews to become an operator, I was still working at the home office with this guy, Jackson Taylor, and he was a great guy. But their interviews, they like to set, kind of mix it up and confuse you a little bit so you walk in and you're a little off balance. And I had been working all day, and I was wearing, of all things you expect from a Georgia guy, right? Cut off overalls and a T-shirt. Awesome. So I tried to clean up.
There's got to be a picture somewhere with that, Scott.
Boots, the whole thing. We're out just sludging around doing
awesome.
some landscaping. So I said, Mr. Santel, I need to go home and just get cleaned up for this. He said, no, just come on in. You're fine. I see you every day. It's no problem. So for him, he was comfortable. I always wondered in the back of his mind was, I just want to see how he reacts in this situation. So I show up and I'm sitting in this pristine, clean office and this very nice chair and he's wearing a three-piece suit. He looks, like $1 million. And here I am looking like this redneck bumpkin. Just had a ribbing contest, something. We might hear banjo music.
It smelled like mulch and gasoline and
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't quite that bad, but in my mind, it couldn't be any worse.
Yeah.
And so we had the interview and he was a great guy. So he made me feel real comfortable, but apparently I said the right things and, things aligned. But, I just had that back door into it, which I don't think is normal. Nowadays it's very difficult. They say it's easier to get into Harvard or Yale
than
it is to become an operator. I think less than 3% of people who apply are selected.
Wow.
So they get 30,000, 40,000 qualified applications every year.
Wow. That's an incredible opportunity, Scott, that you've really pushed and nourished and turned into something that is uncommon even among other franchisees, right? I mean, you have your hand in multiple franchises at this point.
Right. One other thing, I worked at the Dwarf House. The Dwarf House is what Truett's restaurant was called, and so it's completely different. This will be shocking, but it serves steaks and hamburgers.
Really?
I know.
Does that still exist?
Still exist. And there's a handful in Atlanta. They're beginning to convert them a little bit because the operation is pretty complex because it was a sit-down waitress, short order, 24-hour kind of deal. So right out of college, I spent about 6 months working there and getting experience how it is to run a full-on restaurant. And one of the things I think is unique about my story too is my access to Kathy, the founder himself. We had opportunities to talk several times.
That's cool.
There were several things that happened through my career where he was real influential. We had a chance. It's a pretty long story, but I had gotten hurt at work, and I just came in the next day, bandaged up my arm. I was like, I'm going to go to work. And he came out to check on me because he says, he was concerned about me and that I didn't have to come into work, but he just wanted me to know that the people are more important than the job, than the purpose, than the product. And I think it was real influential because that kind of shifted my, expectations of what business was about, because he genuinely cared about people. He genuinely cared about, how everyone was doing. What we did was only secondary to who we were. And that's a good thing for a young man to hear. That sets the tone, doesn't it? Right. So one of the things he would say was, people are more important than the profits, and that's easy to say, but I saw that demonstrated. Yep. That profits, we're here to make money and be a business, but how we do that is more important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it is incredible when people like himself and yourself, you guys demonstrate that attitude, and the product and the profits are still so good, or like maybe even better than it's, so it just like sets the whole ecosystem in a completely different trajectory. What do you make of that? So what do you think's going on there that where it's all thriving and you're focusing people first? It's easy to try to, I guess I could see a lot of business owners, or you see business owners that like white knuckle things and try to, clearly they have a negative impact on people for the profit. What do you think's going on there that leads to the ideal scenario?
That's a good question. I think experientially for me, and you got to realize all Chick-fil-A's are individually owned and operated, and all the stores can have a little different culture. There's no magic formula, but I think because of my experience, that I realized early on, and I'll tell you this story because I think it really sets it up. About 2 years into the business, it's starting to grow, it's starting to take off, and I'm feeling good about it. And so being competitive, coming out of athletics, I just pushed. And I'd push my team, we get through lunch, and we be just like all excitement. But one day after a very busy lunch period, one of my 18-year employees said, "Hey, can I talk to you after lunch?" I'm like, "Sure." And so I'm leaving him, and like, we're crushing it. Well, he pulls me aside. He goes, "I got to tell you something. You're probably going to fire me, but you got a great thing going here, but you're a real jerk to work for." And that was shocking. And it was eye-opening. And I think, it was the Holy Spirit just going, keep your mouth shut and listen, because you wanted to jump up and defend. Number one, who you 18-year-old kid to tell me what I'm doing? I'm like 25 years old. I know everything. But I had the wisdom, and I guess, my mouth was shut, and I just listened to him. And I realized that I really wasn't taking care of my people. And I took the challenge from him, really, to not be a jerk, number one, but to start thinking about business in terms of that human piece deeper, is where that turning point was for me. And it took me years. It didn't happen immediately, but what I discovered was when you take care of your people and you put people first, that could be your employees and your customers, but if you take care of your employees first, you invest in them, instill them the values of which you want your business to be, then something begins to happen, because the benefactor of that is your customer. If you're taking care of your people on a high level, it's been said, cared for people, care for people. And so I realized the more I took care of them, the more the things that I wanted to accomplish, that I was pushing really hard on, began to happen. And even though I was young and I'm still learning, and I didn't know and still don't know everything, I began real quickly that engaging people in the business and in trusting and empowering them had great returns. And by spending a little time with them to do some of the things that I thought were important for me to do, then their engagement became a lot higher. And I think even more importantly, the alignment of my people, all being on the same page, because not only they heard what I was saying, but they saw me walking it out every day. Because when you saw me, I was probably working 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Then I think they began to buy in to what my vision was and what the dream was. And, back in 1986 when we opened the restaurant, Chick-fil-A was not a sure thing. I mean, we were delusional in a sense, and I think there's an entrepreneurial principle about this of delusional, you're not going to fail.
Right.
It's not possible to fail. And I think it just drove me to push really hard. But as I began to pull them in on what the vision was, well, I think my odds of success went up because now it wasn't just me with it. I had 17 employees at that time. They were all going the same direction.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the key difference of why what we do is so much important, because as you prioritize your people over the profits, well, that changes your approach. And I think you can get both. It's one of those things where if you do your job well and you help create other entrepreneurial-minded people, then they start to get that your success on the profit line is important to them because it's a fruit of what we're working for. And so as they're engaged on your team, they want to see you succeed. If the head coach wants to go to the World Series and the team's not bought into that, you're never going to make it.
Right.
But as the entire team goes, yeah, we're all going to make that World Series, then you've got a team of winners and just a lot of power in that.
So you did not fire the 18-year-old kid?
I did not. He eventually became a team leader. He still lives in here in Melbourne. He's an engineer.
Cool.
But I've told him, I've had the opportunity to tell him, says, dude, you were influential. I said, he was at our restaurant one time. I said, see these restaurants. And I mean, we're just jamming. We got people everywhere. And I said, a lot of this is your credit to you for you just speaking truth. So because of that, I seek truth speakers in my business. That's awesome. I encourage that. That's one of my core values for my leadership team is that they're transparent. They can speak honestly with me.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Well, how did it, tell us a little bit about how it has grown, Scott, since from 25-year-old Scott changing his mindset and the fruit of that, where you guys at today?
Well, we started with 17 employees, myself and my wife. And, you'd spoken to working with your spouse or working with family, and that's tough. And early on, we had some tough conversations. And I look back now, I realized what we didn't have were real established roles and guardrails. Over the years, we figured that out, and we put those guardrails into place and helped establish what those roles were. But I think it's important if you're working together as a married couple in any context that you're clear on who does what. And so from that we grew we grew really well, for just being a food stand in the mall. Whereas in 1999 I was able to become one of the first, wasn't the first, don't get this wrong, I was one of probably the first 20 guys that were multi-unit. And that was a new concept. A lot of people weren't sold on it. So in 1999, we opened the Chick-fil-A on Palm Bay Road.
Wow.
And back then there was a cow field. It really was. Walmart, us, and a bunch of cows. So what you see today is definitely
Very on brand with the whole Chick-fil-A.
It really was. People asked if we did that deliberately, actually. Yeah. And that's where business began to grow, because what you have in the freestanding restaurant, you don't have in the mall. The mall helped build the brand, but you have a billboard there 24/7.
Yeah.
People see the building. It begs that interest because they could drive and buy it. And not only did that bring in more customers, brought in more employees. So we went from having 70 employees to at that point I think we had about 75 total at both locations. And that grew, but even then it was very new. There were very few freestanders. People weren't familiar with it. They didn't know what Chick-fil-A was. I had the humbling moment then as well. Thought I'd done an amazing job. Everybody knows Chick-fil-A. Everybody knows who I am. But once you get out there in the street, you're in a whole different marketplace. And people didn't know who we were. So we knew what we did to build the brand initially. We went back to those same things. Having, a separate building allowed us to do a lot of things we couldn't do before in the community, and we did a lot of crazy things. We did family nights, daddy-daughter date nights. We did
comedy shows.
Comedy
Remember
shows.
that?
Yeah,
No
we had a
way.
church. We did.
Yeah.
And we had a church come in that did puppet shows.
Yeah.
We did karaoke night. I mean, if you name it, we came up with some kind of crazy thing just to generate interest in it. My team reminds me we did this one called 2 for Tuesday. Anything you buy, you got a second one free.
Wow.
Across the menu. So that was an insane promotion. But as we did that consistently and people began to try us, once again, see who we were, try the product, and the product sells itself. But I think what we had to give above and beyond that was the service aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And our service is really what differentiates Chick-fil-A, the level of engagement with our customer, the friendliness, and that's a lot by design. We found as we hired young people, they didn't have those skills, but they were very open to it. And I think one of our measures of success is that simple phrase, my pleasure. Mm-hmm. As we began the first day, say, hey, this is how do we I'll ask the question, how do we respond when somebody says thank you? And, they know culturally, because they've heard about it, it's my pleasure. But it's awkward at first, and they don't feel like it's real. And you got to keep coaching them, encouraging them, and say, you're doing a great job. I caught you doing it. But I know that touchdown is when I'll run into one of their parents in town or church or wherever they might be, and they go, I got to tell you a funny story. And I already know it's coming. It's about 6 weeks in. I said, my son's been working there for about 6 weeks, and he came home the other day, and I told him, thanks for picking his room up. He goes, oh, my pleasure. And for for that person, this 16-year-old kid, you're turning to beat red like, come on, Mom. But it is a source of pride for them, too. Because that is part of the culture, and as they begin to learn those skills, and you got to think about it. Nothing is more impressive than having a 16-year-old kid take your order and have manners and some professionality and to say my pleasure.
Well, and what that does for them in the future. I mean, it's that level of customer service. You learn that there. You can take that, and you'll shine in any other field that you go into. That's something that I've noticed is that because I've known some of the employees that come in and out of Chick-fil-A, and I knew them before they went in, and I knew them when they came out, and it's kind of amazing how that culture that you cultivated there, how that impacted their life and their careers and stuff like that. So it's just a testament to it. It's pretty awesome.
And that's, I think, probably been the funnest thing to experience over the last nearly 40 years. Has been watching that transformation of people, because we do hire a lot of young people, and especially early on, and you would bring them in, and we found the high success rate of employees were those 15-year-olds we hired, those young 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds, because they were eager, they had a work ethic that wasn't probably that norm, and so they wanted to get in work and learn, and they were just like, as we were talking about your kids earlier, they were sponges. And I think teenagers are the same way. Yeah. Even today, we see the same thing. Kids come in and they're hungry to learn about how this thing works. And Chick-fil-A and having a job, that they're really hungry for that. This generation, I've seen the statistics, one of the highest priorities is for these new kids coming into the marketplace is they want to learn some leadership skills. Mm-hmm. Boy, that aligns exactly with what we do, because we want, number one, all of our team members to be able to lead themselves. That's the first step in leadership. But we'd get these young people in over the years and teach them these fundamentals. And that's probably one of the greatest strengths we have as an employer that makes us what I would call an employer of choice is if you're young, you want to learn some basics to set you up for success, it's a great place to go to. Mm-hmm. So as I've heard from former employees coming in who are attorneys or in different jobs, they go, man, what I learned at Chick-fil-A was probably the most important thing that set me up for success in my career. And I just think it's interesting because it doesn't get taught well out there.
Yeah. One of my, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on our podcast or not, but one of my favorite jobs, I don't know, actually today, I still might say it's my favorite job that I've ever had, including the one I have now, which is, it's going to shock people, but bagging groceries at Albertsons. When I was a teenager, I had this store director, Cornelius Walker. hopefully he's still alive. I'm not sure if he's still alive or not, but made a huge impact on me. And he saw me, he saw something in me. He believed in me. He taught me some skills. The way that I interacted with customers and learned how to interact with customers while I was bagging their groceries, while I was walking them out to their car, how I did my job, how I, Cornelius was a huge part of teaching me some of those softer skills that kind of I've applied to everything I've ever done since.
If you think about those skills, we call them the core four. Make eye contact. That's a valuable thing out there in the workplace. It makes share smile. Just be pleasant. It doesn't take a lot to do that, and it differentiates people from kind of the mass of people out there. Stay connected. Have communication skills. The simple things. So these simple things really come together to help people learn those fundamentals, like you were saying, of just how do you work. And for us, it's working as a team. Yeah. We have different areas. We look at our back of house as a little factory floor. And so back in the beginning, it was me and my wife. But, at this point, we've got 9 people back there producing food during lunch. And that's just on the hot side. That's not including the 3-4 people on the salad side. So we'll have a dozen people back there and just getting food up so the customers can have their lunch. But they've got to figure out some skill. There's a lot of skills of communication, of working together, of give and take, of, something gets said, of just realizing it's not about me, it's kind of in the heat of the moment. So those skills are the things when you get into the workplace. Yep. For us, it's like a pressure cooker. So if they get into the workplace, it's kind of a lot easier. But for some people who don't have that background, it's intense. They don't know how to manage and navigate those waters.
Yep.
Whereas you've had a chance to work in a restaurant, and especially a high volume restaurant, to be pushed to the test. When you get out, you're like, man, everything's easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge advantage for people that want to be entrepreneurs, go out, start a business, to at some point put yourself in a position like that, to work at a Chick-fil-A, to bag whatever it is, but to put yourself in a position like that where you are serving others and learning how to serve them, even when they're rude or even when it's like it's not an ideal situation, pressure cooker, whatever it is. But what you learn in those environments is I don't know. I mean, it's I don't have a college education, but I've heard sometimes it's better than a college education. It prepares you more for business and for doing something bigger and more kind of beyond what you thought you were going to do. It prepares you more for that. It kind of gives you a grounded experience.
Well, if you think about things that are like that, like a sports team, if you have a good coach, you're going to learn a lot of those same skills. The military, they're awesome for producing discipline and a lot of these necessary skills of working together that make people successful. And there's a lot of other routes other than college. College gives you something a little extra, a little different, but I don't think that's better or worse than other paths that get you through the same experience. And I know that one of the things I'm envious of my friends who have been through the military is because they've gone through these periods of trial, and each branch has a different name for what that is. But as they go through that, and they learn how far they can push themselves. Boy, that becomes invaluable in an entrepreneurial mind, because starting a business, you're going to go through tough times. There's going to be times where you don't think you can give another inch, or you can go another day or make another hour. And there were days when we were beginning and things were tough and we didn't have the budget to hire as many leaders as I needed, where I was working 16, 18 hours a day. Run home, get a little sleep, get a little food, and come back and go at it again.
Do you feel like your experience as an athlete helped lend to how you handled those kind of things?
Oh, absolutely. Having that background of just being disciplined to get up each day to go at it again. And that belief that each day was going to be better because of what you did the day before. And in the beginning, sometimes you just got your head in front of you, but as you could begin to create a little space, you can start thinking a little bit further ahead. And I think early on I realized that it wasn't necessarily how hard I worked on the business, it's how I influenced those around me as I worked. And so I realized that it became, at one point, it wasn't important that I was working all the time, but I would jump in and work beside someone just because I knew the influence I had would help develop them as a person and as a leader. And later on. So what I shared earlier with those young 16-year-olds and those 15-year-olds is most of my leadership today is made up of those people that began working for me. And they'll be embarrassed that I say this, but I've had some that are 30 years, 27 years, 25 years. We're celebrating a lot of milestones here, 20-year employees. And that's not to say anything less of those been with me 10 or 5 or 10 years. But my executive team's been with me for, I think, cumulatively several hundred years.
Wow.
And they started with me in high school. They know me, and which is good and bad. They got some great stories about early on in my career. I'll share one, but they've really grown up and they know the business and they can anticipate what I'm going to do. Now, I'm always pulling things out of left field. That's what we do as entrepreneurs. We sometimes we'll go back in our business and break something just so we have something to fix.
These guys don't experience that from me ever. I'm pretty even.
I'm learning now it's important for me to be out of the way and be a good coach.
Yeah.
You never see the head coach coming down the stairs and getting on the field and yell at the team, but it's been a journey, and there's times where being an entrepreneur and really having that drive, you can be very intense.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things they would tell you is probably one of my negatives is I can be very intense, especially when we have a goal. I can almost push too hard. And so there was a point where we're working on growing our lunch business in the mall. At that point, everything happens at one time. 11:30 to 1:30, we made probably 3/4 of the day. We had to be on. So we would get phone calls in the middle of lunch. And there's just a point where I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why are people calling? So I grabbed the phone and I yanked it off the wall and I tossed it like a basketball across the middle of lunch right into a trash can. And that's like one of my employees' favorite stories. Like, I remember Scott. You don't know. He can be very intense. My employees today think I'm the most laid back, smooth guy there is. But back then they saw that intensity of we're going to win. And I think that was not always a positive demonstration of that.
This is amazing.
That's a good one, Scott.
That's great.
Scott, maybe tell us a little bit about your journey as an investor. So when did you start, your asset diversification process? What did that look like to kind of impact some of the things you are today outside of your franchise?
Yeah, early on, we didn't make any money. I remember a couple of years where it just didn't happen, and it was a struggle. We had one. I know the month that felt the best was we got into January, and January tended to be a slower month, and I wrote a profit check for like $37. I think it was $37.58.
Wow.
And I wanted to frame it, but I needed the $37. And it doesn't sound like much, but it was at a point where I realized, okay, we're going to make it. It was probably the first 2.5 years we got to that point, and I'm like, okay, we can do this. This is going to be good. And as that began to grow, I think in part because we did struggle for so long, my wife and I were and we still are. We're very careful with our finances. We just don't go buy a bunch of stuff because we can, and so we always tried to start thinking we need at least 3 months. Because at that point we were still very tied to retail, and Black Friday is a deal. We made a huge percentage of our income between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we had to budget well. We had spoke with a financial planner early on, Ron Blue, and he's not even around. I think he's passed away since then. But we read through his materials, and he was big about paying cash, not using credit, and almost to the extreme. But I think we needed to hear that as a young couple, that it's important to do certain activities, put a little up for retirement, keep emergency fund, and so we began to practice those things, and we found ourselves As our kids were getting ready to go off to college, we were debt-free because we had a plan to pay off, our mortgages and everything. So when they head off to college, we just sort of shifted the money over to there. But we did a reassessment then, and we were pleasantly surprised. We were on target, except we really hadn't put nearly enough up for retirement because we were really focused on, family. And I remember having that conversation of just really committing to start investing. And investing really has got to start with good fundamentals. Having money put up for savings, having a good retirement plan, and being an entrepreneur, I had to set that up. And Simple's a great way to go. We now have a 401k, but we just got disciplined about putting money up. And at the beginning was annually, just sort of squirrel it away and go, okay, that's what we got, and throw it, Hail Mary it. But as we got more disciplined of putting monthly money up and thinking it through, those things started to look pretty good to where, okay, maybe one day we could retire or do what we wanted to do and travel. Eventually we got to a point where we're like, okay, we've met these goals, we've got a good plan, but we do have this extra. What do we do with it? And because I started in the marketplace young and really hungry, I saw other people out there. I had employees starting businesses and meeting people in the community.
Same kind of people.
I saw those same things. I saw that hunger, and I wanted to be that guy someday that could come along somebody who had that drive to start their own business, to be successful, who just had this delusion of like, it'll never fail. But to come alongside to them and help them learn some of the hard lessons I learned early on, some of the mistakes I made, to share some of those truths with them. But then to be able to invest in their companies when it was time. And I had been working on that, thinking it through. And about that time, I ran into Matt, and Matt says, "Hey, there's this guy." And it's like, "You got to meet him." I was like, "Wow!" And so we met with this gentleman, and I saw that drive. I saw those things that you were like, yeah, I see what he's doing and I believe in what he's doing. So that's where we really engaged. Now there's been a couple of wild ones out there where guys with these crazy stories, but you're just like, man, the story itself, you see the value in. And there's been some that I've just looked at and said, yeah, it's not a good fit. And I think there's important as an investor to know what you know. And if you don't know about it, maybe that's not for you. There's been some that I felt like, okay, I don't know anything about it, but I don't want to learn. And so I've dug in deep and tried to learn about this part of industry or business and to get my head around what's going on so that I'm not an ignorant investor. I think that's a danger of Lloyd. Sounds like a great idea, but I've made a couple of mistakes, and you look back and go, I should have known more about it. I should have asked more questions. And so it's not always going to be perfect, but I've learned to go back and do a little bit more research and reading and ask definitely more questions when I'm looking at things now.
I love that, just your point on that you're looking for people that have that same drive that you have and had at that age. You know what I mean? That's a powerful position to be in, with like empathize with people like that, and maybe, hey, if I give this person a chance, if they show their credit and I give this person a chance, maybe they can, like, the impact you can help them have might be greater than you could imagine, Right.
And if you look at all the great inventors and all the great ideas, they happened in the 20s. Einstein, Apple, all these things are happening with young people. A lot of times we can look and go, well, you don't have a track record. You're not organized. And so as investors, we'll try to take a safe track and find someone who's older, has got a better business plan. But some of the greatest minds and the greatest concepts have happened early on in people's careers. And so, why not help some of those folks?
That's awesome.
Along their dream.
Incredible, man.
That's a great perspective. It's a wonderful perspective. There's a I kind of came from a background where, there weren't a lot of people that thought that I would really do anything in my life because of my speech impediment and some of the things that I grew up with. And so I was always, and my age didn't help either. So like I was always felt like I was older and meant for more than what there were little moments where guys like you gave me that extra bit of confidence that I could go and do it and I could go and achieve it, because they were respectable people, they were kind people, they were respected people, and there's something powerful about somebody like you coming along, someone like me, or many of the other people that you've done in your life, in your career, and saying, I believe in you, and I'm going to go down the path. And I mean, it's been, I mean, just our relationship has been very helpful and validating for me in dark times. I mean, when you're starting a business, and you're starting something new, it's a challenge, and you do have a lot of people saying, "Yeah, you're not going to make it. You'll never do it. You'll never figure it out." And yeah, man. I mean, being in someone's corner and helping them through that is it's essential. It's rad.
Yeah, that's one of the things. As you know, one of my, I think, things deep down that I want to do is come along people to have that opportunity, because I was told like you. You know, my parents split up early, and I went through a time when I was a teenager that I was in trouble. You know, that a lot of people didn't want to have to deal with me. You know, it's, you know, I was told I was a bad influence. I was that guy, but I just didn't have any direction. And I remember when I was 15, a lot of prayer through my grandmother, but I was going to church. You know, the church had cute girls there, so that was a little motivation.
Yep, been there, done that.
So I'll tell the story. My grandmother had a great plan of getting me into church, and she'd always been praying for us, and she was always inviting me. Well, she bought a new Cadillac, and I had just gotten my learner's permit, and she had this idea of like, I'll drive down, pick Scott up, and I'll have him drive me to church, because you know, and she's told me this. Who, you know, what 15-year-old kid's not gonna turn that away?
Right. That's cool.
And it worked. She would drive literally 45 minutes out of her way to come pick me up, so I could drive her to church. And so that began. I started going every Sunday with her, and sometimes Sunday nights. And you know, I'm like cruising behind this new Fleet line, thinking I was all cool and everything. But I got into church and saw some pretty girls here, and so that was maybe the first piece. But there was a youth pastor there, this guy Randy Rithenshaw, and he took interest in me, and he started telling me things like, I really wasn't this guy. I mean, I was a guy from the wrong side of the tracks, from a divorced family. During that time, I like to say I was the first Gen Xer, because I had a key around my neck to get in the house. I never saw my parents, and so when I started going there, and he started telling me and encouraging me that there was more. So he invited me to this, I did a youth retreat, and I'm around the Christian kids, and realized I'm from the other side of the tracks. We speak different languages. And I just saw them as these nerdy kids, but he wanted me to come, and they were cheesy and all this stuff. But I got in there and got to be around, hang around with them, and most of them weren't as weird as I thought. But he shared the gospel with me, and it was just, you know, like that moment when I was like, wow, there's a whole nother world here. I have no idea. And I began to, I think at that point it was this awareness that I'd never had. I would just kind of get through life, and I think I would have continued down that path of just stumbling through life. Things happen to you, and you just go with it. But it began to see that there was a purpose, that there were things that I didn't know that were awesome, and that I did have potential, and through those encouragements and through that salvation experience, I became this different person. I think I was really the first step into leadership was just being led. And what you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
But that was transformative, and that's where I met my wife. And you know, we've been together since you know, I became a Christian, and since we were 16 years old. So we've been together 44 years. Yeah, 44 years.
Wow.
I think just pragmatically, a really transformative part of the gospel is that, like, it's not necessarily what you do, but it's why you do it. Like, are you doing it for the glory of God? You know, so just to your point, Scott, when you're being led and all of a sudden you have this new purpose or reason why you're doing things, has obviously been incredibly impactful, transformative.
Yeah, one thing I saw is I had no discipline. Because again, my mom was doing the best she could as a single mom. My dad was out of the picture. I realized I needed discipline. And so I'd been told, my dad came out of the service during the Vietnam era. We were not allowed to go into the service because just the disrespect for during that time. And he just said, I forbid you from going. And I didn't ever listen to my dad, but for some reason I listened to that. But so my brother and I, we never joined, but we saw we needed discipline. So my solution was I went to Liberty University. And so if you know anything about Liberty, at that point it was just a small Bible college. Had a bunch of rules. And what's funny was that I saw myself that I needed those rules. Regardless of whether I agreed with all of them or not, I saw that I needed to have someone hold me accountable.
Some structure, yeah.
And that's where I got into athletics, and then all that really came together to build out a good framework for me to move into and become an entrepreneur and open a restaurant and really grow that brand that I don't think I would have had without it.
I was going to go to Pensacola Christian College, play basketball there, and I went there to visit, and guys and girls were not allowed to walk on the same sidewalk.
Right.
And then I decided, I don't want to go here.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a couple of friends that went there and lasted like a semester.
Yeah. I mean, you had to, when I was visiting, you had to wear a tie from, if you were going to go play basketball, you had to wear a tie and a full dress up from your dorm room to the basketball court. And then you could take that off, play basketball, have to put it back on to walk back to it was interesting.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's more than I would have dealt with.
Yeah, but I do agree, Scott, that you need, I like this idea of having some kind of lifestyle framework that simulates stress and struggle and discipline intensity. I mean, wakes up super early to go to the gym, and it's that same thing. Like when you go through a really intense workout, or whatever, like those simulations of stress and struggle, it shows you how to deal with those things. Athletics being the same way.
Yeah, you can never experience success if you haven't had trials and struggles, and you don't really understand what you've gotten.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that we inadvertently do to young people today is we try to make things easy. Everyone's a winner, but you know what? You got to understand, you lose sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if you can't go through failure and go, okay, well, let's try it again. And it certainly as an entrepreneur, you're going to try a lot of times. You're going to fail a lot of times. But if you don't have a comfort with that, if you don't look for criticism to help you grow, you're never going to become the person you want to be or be as successful as you want to be unless you've had that and actively look for it.
It creates that perseverance,
Right.
I mean, it's what's that? There's a book written, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Success is never ending, failure is never final. Phenomenal book. But I mean, the whole premise of that is that you're always moving and striving towards success. You will fail forward, and that failure is not final. Just keep moving, keep pushing on. But you're right. I mean, it's success without failure. But I don't think that's a real thing.
Well, if you look at, there's been a number of books written by Navy SEALs, and I think one of the themes that comes out of there is driven to failure so that you can grow because you're building on that. But I think what comes out of that residually as they live their life is doing hard stuff's good for you. Yeah. They say do something hard every day. Yeah. And because it gives you that pleasure, and they go to the point of pain is pleasure. In a sense, it is, because you can really appreciate what you've earned because you've gone through this pain. And certainly you can look at a franchise as successful as Chick-fil-A today, and it's a different environment entering in today, but you still make a lot of failures, whether it's the people you hire or the business decisions you make, or this great idea that's going to be better throughput on your factory floor that is a complete train wreck. There's a lot of decisions to make that don't yield positive results. And it's that continual going back to the drawing board and trying again, regardless of what the previous day was like, because it would have been early to call it quits. It would have been easy to call it quits early on, but just going back every day and doing it again.
Yeah.
And it isn't that beating your head against the wall. It's that you are learning, right? You are growing.
One of our last questions here, Scott. What would you tell, 25-year-old Scott or young people that are starting their entrepreneurial journey? What would be like your advice out the gate?
Out of the gate, man, I've learned so much that, I think it would to be care for your people, invest in your people, be honest with them, share them early on and what the journey is and what the vision is, and help paint that picture of what could be. But that comes with those things of, hey, what are you about? What's your mission? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think you answered those questions early on. It can make things happen a lot easier, because you're not trying to make a decision based upon yesterday. You're making a decision on what you know. We know we are this, and so we're going to make decisions based on that. Not because I'm mad right now because it failed yesterday. I also tell myself to chill a little bit. It's going to happen because I do push hard, and sometimes that flares up a little bit, and I just have to manage that piece of like, okay, I've got to be patient, because if you're doing the right things and you have a good plan and you trust in that plan, as you walk it out, it's going to work. You're constantly making tweaks to it, but it'll work, and I think we can get impatient and push too hard and actually set ourselves back of where we want to be, because we're angry with where we are today.
Matt, you want to ask him the final question, my man?
I think that's kind of he just answered the final question.
Oh, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. We typically ask, what advice would you give to people that are just starting out and want to be entrepreneurs? I think I think you just answered that question eloquently and perfectly. I will say this, you personally, just as Scott Washburn, is there something that inside of business, outside of business, just one thing that you really cling to and you live by, that drives who you are as a man?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it's probably just trying to be a man of integrity. I think we have a responsibility as men that to be consistent to who we say we are. Yeah. That I think, if you look in the political world, it's not really important. But I think as a believer, as a businessman, as a husband, as a father, I want to be the same dude. Yeah. Where no matter where I'm at, whether with my family, with my buddies, at work or at church, that people don't see this inconsistency that would make me seem hypocritical. And I can't say I'm perfect, but I think most people would agree that, the Scott that's going to share business principles in the workplace aligns with the guy who's speaking on Sunday morning, because they've given me, for any number of reasons, a chance to have the pulpit several times a year, but I want that to be consistent, that I don't have to make up a story on why I'm doing something or try to explain something away. So I think that's important.
It's awesome.
I think the world's looking for people who are genuine.
Yeah.
I think if you want to speak truth to any young person who's not sure about who they are, if you're just genuine and walk out, that's going to give them confidence that they can do it too.
It's awesome. It really gives them, as the leader, and you're being vulnerable and you're being genuine, it gives them permission to do the same. Again, it's that watching, anyway, so that's awesome. This is great, man. Scott, thanks so much for coming out, bro.
Sure.
Yeah, cheers, man. We appreciate your insight and sharing your story with us.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody.